good transforming robots wage war against evil transforming robots, as well as an eviler giant transforming robot. Special guest Clinton Festa joins us to discuss conspiracy theories about Optimus Prime's death, gender in robot-based fiction, and the forgotten Dinobot. There's more than meets the eye when we find out if the Transformers, the movie, stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have to say, do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with the glutton, Alan says as a father blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have to say, do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have to say, do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Test of Time. And this is a duo podcast with me and my buddy Alan Noah. But today, in honor of the movie that we're reviewing, we are transforming this podcast into a trio of hosts. First, I'm going to introduce my co-host, Alan Noah. How are you, Al?
I am doing very well. And yeah, joining us today to talk about the Transformers: the movie is our friend Clinton Festa. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It is so much fun doing this show. I'm so happy to be back. Thank you.
I am very, very, very glad that you're here. I kind of can't wait to get into this conversation about the Transformers. But I do have to start off by just mentioning that the last time you were here, we talked about the movie Purple Rain, starring Prince. We had a great conversation. If you missed it, go back and find that episode. But we started off that episode talking about all of these plays that you have written. And since then, you've written another one that our listeners can find. I'll post the link. It's called Bibbidi Bobbidi Boot Camp. It's really, really damn funny. So first off, just way to go, man. You just write plays all the time.
Thank you. And anybody out there listening to podcasts, Bibbidi Bobbidi Boot Camp it's an audio play. You don't need to look at anything. You could listen to it walking around the park or somewhere safe. But yeah, I hope you check it out. I hope you enjoy it. It's exactly what it sounds like. A little bit of Cinderella meets Full Metal Jacket.
That's a perfect way to describe it. And it's funny that you say that about where you can listen to it, because I feel a little douchey saying this, but I was listening to it at the gym, and I have to stop doing that. I have to stop listening to your audio plays at the gym because people are looking at me because I'm cracking up on the leg press because they're really, really funny. Where did the idea come from for this one?
The idea probably just came into my head like a pun. I am a dad, so I come up with bad puns. And that one just popped in my head. Now, there is a real thing called the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique.
Oh, yeah.
That's a trademark thing. That's Disney's. You go in there and you can get turned into a princess and get your hair done and get your dress and everything like that. So maybe it was rattling around in there somewhere. And I thought, what about boot camp? That would be a pretty funny juxtaposition. So I enjoyed writing it, and it was fun. And there's also the element of who you're creating roles for. If anybody's involved in local theater, if anybody's a playwright out there, try to make sure you're writing roles for the people who show up for auditions. If you're gonna attend auditions, you'll know that there are a lot of talented women age 40 and up who show up for auditions for short plays or whatever. And it's sad seeing some of that talent not get cast. So any kind of play where you can come up with 5 roles for, a couple, or in this case, 5 women that can be really any age for audio. That's, I think, a good goal, because that just helps out the whole overall program.
And the voice actors in this particular play were really good. I mean, they were good in the others too, but they have real talent. They sell the premise. You buy these women as fairy godmothers, the sound effects. I mean, it all comes together really well.
And that I just got really lucky, because I got a really good director. You submit a play, if it gets selected, you're kind of done with it unless the director reaches out to you. The director in this case was able to put together such a good cast. I was really thrilled with how it turned out.
Definitely. But so I wanted to kind of start this conversation about Transformers kind of going back to when you and I met, Clint,
Yeah.
because we met as perfect strangers freshman year at Cornell. We talked on the phone once before, but we met in the dorm, and very quickly we realized that we had a love of the same kinds of pop culture things, and not just, we both love The Simpsons because everyone loved The Simpsons, but we loved Weird Al, we loved Norm Macdonald.
Yep.
Were there any others that were like kind of more niche that you and I had in common?
Weird Al right away, because I remember thinking, I'm gonna have to make sure this guy's okay with some of my Weird Al albums. And then you were said, "What, are you kidding me?" And you showed me you had, I think, discography to date, and
Yep,
I was like,
correct.
"Oh, dude, I don't have that one or that one. We can listen to this all the time."
Yes.
And we'll have a little Weird Al to talk about in this episode.
Yes. But I bring that up because our Venn diagram of pop culture touch points was basically just a circle. But the
Right.
one thing where we didn't overlap was you loved the Transformers, and you talked about like watching the cartoon as a kid,
Yep.
and I just never was into that. And I felt like that was like the one thing we couldn't bond over, because you were like, wait, you never watched Transformers? And I was like, mm-mm. And you were like, wait, what? Huh?
That was my sliver on my side, and on your sliver was probably Star Wars.
Okay, fair.
I just hadn't seen it. And I did eventually see all of them, and a lot of great things to say there. But at the time, right, I was a Transformers dork, and that is going to be one of my questions for tonight is where are you guys at with Transformers? Because once you get me started,
Well, I think that's a good thing. James, did you watch Transformers like when you were a kid back in the 80s?
I actually was much more of a He-Man guy, along with Thundercats. That's the other T that I was into.
and G.I. Joe was huge too. So, I mean, if I remember right, those are the four big ones. I liked the other ones as a kid: Thundercats, G.I. Joe, and He-Man. But there was, in my head, there was such a big interest gap between Transformers and the other stuff.
Transformers was the number one.
For sure, I watched all the other stuff. It was on TV and other things beyond that, well, the Disney Afternoon and stuff like that. But the Transformers hit me like it was mythology. The movie came out after season 2 and before season 3 and 4. And Hasbro, the toy company, had a lot of heavy-handedness in the production of these stories. And I think the writers really did an admirable job, especially with the series, because to me, the characters were great. And the story was about like the kind of indefinite struggle for energy and the impact it has on peace and prosperity in any culture anywhere. That it really is a recurring theme in the series. But the movie comes out in between like the 1985 sort of present day season 1 and 2, where all of the characters change into a minivan or maybe a cool airplane. And then the later seasons where you're not cool if you don't turn into some sort of cosmic spaceship. And that had to have been kind of hard, I think, picking up the movie, because they really do assume, like mythology, like if you were to go see a Greek tragedy in ancient Greece, they're not going to tell you who Heracles or, Atreus is. They're just going to go into it and you're going to have to know. And that's how they do this movie.
Yeah.
The movie, when it came out, I guess I was second or third grade. I was already a Transformers fan, and I was really excited to see the movie. And being a kid, I thought, oh, well, when a movie goes out in the movie theaters, it's there for like 6 months, right? And I was going to see it, and I wanted to see it, but I'm also 7 years old. And then I did start hearing rumors from people who had seen it. And I said, no, there's no way they did that. And you guys know what I'm talking about. So I did not see the movie in the movie theaters. Not that I was necessarily avoiding it, just that sort of like I kind of lost some interest. And then I ran out of time. And then before we know it, the new school year starts and we're already into season 3 episodes, because this stuff moves fast. And now I'm seeing the effects, and now I'm just sort of like, well, that's it. So the moment passed, I never saw it in the movie theater, and I didn't really get around to watching it until after college. And I was like, all right, I'm going to deal with this. But what they did give you in season 3 and 4 was the return of Optimus Prime as like this zombie controlled by the Quintessons, which was just disturbing. And eventually, at the end of the series, they did bring him back. And they didn't just bring him back, they used the word resurrection.
Oh,
I've heard some writers talk about this. I heard one writer call him like an Abraham Lincoln kind of a character. But you're talking about somebody else when you're using terms like resurrection.
yeah. That's Jesus. That would be Jesus.
Yeah, and he's not just Autobot Jesus. He's Transformer Jesus because it's for the Decepticons too. Like his return is for the peace of all. He stops some horrible plague that's affecting all the Transformers. So that's not happening in the movie. That happens in the end of season 3. Keep in mind, season 4 is only a couple episodes, so this is very near the end of the series. In the movie, though, they kill him off. The stories I've heard is Hasbro told the writers to do that. But I have so many conspiracy theories on that. And then they bring him back as a zombie, as if to say, shut up, he's dead, leave it alone, and quit crying, third grader. And then I did hear a writer say, we brought him back because we had to. The fans demanded we bring him back. So he
Right.
did come back, and, all is well in the end.
I think it really just came down to greed. I don't think it's too much of a conspiracy theory, even that evil. I think the person was just kind of like, so he'll die and we'll give him like new people they'll love. Like, I think they were just probably like stupid. I don't think they're like, let's give all those kids nightmares. I just don't think they even cared because they were too dumb to think about that 5-year-olds are watching this hero every single day, that like leader hero. And then boom.
Did you notice the first wound he takes?
No, what's that?
He gets speared in the side.
Ah.
Yeah, Jesus on the cross gets speared in the side. Optimus Prime takes like a lance in the side. I mean, if you were to like pinpoint the location on the body, I think the writers were doing that because I don't think they were thrilled with the idea of having kill off Optimus Prime. I think Hasbro told them to do it, but it was, let's make some new toys. And Optimus Prime, if you own the toy, was painted red and blue, and that's Autobot colors. Purple and like lime green are more Decepticon colors. They weren't really selling many Optimus Primes if you look at the people I knew. What do you do if you want to get people to buy a toy? You make a new Autobot leader. What's the first toy you're going to get? It's the Autobot leader. Well, by gosh, let's make 2 versions of it. So you've got Hot Rod and Rodimus Prime, and yes, those were 2 separate toys. You could buy Hot Rod, and you could buy Rodimus Prime. So this is just sort of the formula for increasing your sales. And my really kind of bizarre theory is that they had a bunch of Optimus Primes left over. And the reason I think that that's plausible is because of Ultra Magnus. I owned Ultra Magnus, and when you bought that toy, you get an Optimus Prime. It's the weirdest thing, but the way he transforms, you don't see this in the cartoon, but the way you make this Transformer, this Autobot come together in his robot form, you have a all-white painted Optimus Prime, and it's him. And you put that in the middle, and you fold the rest of the toy around it. So not only are we killing off Optimus Prime, but we're going to sell you his ghost.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that's how I got a version of Optimus Prime. I never owned the real one. And now you're watching Series 3. And by the way, when he comes back as a hero, in the very end, they coat him in this, resistance to the plague that's infecting everybody. And he, sure enough, looks just like the white painted Optimus Prime toy you get when you buy Ultra Magnus. So I wonder if that was the writers throwing us a bone as kids, knowing like, hey, we're going to write this in and, we're just going to help you out because we know what we did to you based on what Hasbro told us to do.
Wow.
I just think killing him was just unnecessary. And also I'm just so disappointed in how pointless his death was because he doesn't even kill the Megatron, the bad guy. I thought there would be some kind of sacrifice, and it's just one kind of blaster that basically finishes him off. But really, all they had to do was hit them once with one of these blasters.
Well, and that was no different than a million battles that you would probably have seen in season 1 and 2. They would get in fights like that all the time, and nobody would die because it's a robot.
Right.
And by the way, Ultra Magnus gets like completely dismembered later on in the movie. And oh yeah, no problem. We'll just put him back together. Cup gets like chopped into pieces, and Rodimus has got like his hands on a foreign planet, and like he doesn't even have epoxy glue, and he's like, "I'll put you back together." It's like, okay, so that's how it normally works. But no, this time they killed him off, and they warned you. They warned you that an Autobot or a Transformer could die because they kill off four or five, six characters leading up to it. And by the way, just to add a little more fuel to my conspiracy theories, the characters they killed off were some bad toys. Like they were toys that you either had to mail away for, because when you bought a Transformer back in the day, you couldn't get just anything at the store. You had like this packet, and there were certain Transformers you had to mail away for, like Wheeljack, and they killed him off. Ironhide and Ratchet were two really weird looking toys that looked nothing like the character, and I think they were ready to hang them up. So they decided, like, hey, we need to set the example that a Transformer can die before we kill off Optimus Prime. Let's strategically do that and get rid of some toys. And we'll replace them with new toys.
Interesting. But let's explain what the Transformers: the movie is all about. So it follows the heroic Autobots, led by Optimus Prime, as they battle the evil Decepticons and their leader Megatron. When Optimus Prime and Megatron fight, they're both mortally wounded. Before he dies, Optimus Prime passes the Matrix of Leadership, a powerful Autobot artifact, to Ultra Magnus. He is to lead the Autobots in the fight against Unicron, a colossal planet-sized transformer capable of consuming entire worlds. Unicron knows that the Matrix is the only thing capable of stopping him, so he rebuilds Megatron into the fearsome Galvatron. Galvatron pursues the Autobots across the galaxy, ultimately taking the Matrix from Ultra Magnus to the planet of Junk. Galvatron attempts to use the Matrix to defeat Unicron, but fails, and Unicron begins to destroy Cybertron, the Transformer home world. An Autobot named Hot Rod takes the Matrix, transforms into Rodimus Prime, and destroys the Unicron and Galvatron, and saves Cybertron. Now, I wrote that fucking sentence, and I don't know what the hell I just said. That is some damn nonsense right there.
That's good. That's good.
I mean, if I hadn't written that, and if I hadn't just watched the movie, I would have to like rewind that a couple times just to get all of that, or maybe I just wouldn't bother.
Go back in a year and read that and see if you recognize any of it.
I will not. I'm going to forget all of this as soon as we are done recording. But James, when the movie came out, how did it do at the box office?
This did not do too well at the box office. This movie was budgeted at $6 million, which is 6 times more than the equivalent of making 90 minutes of the television show would have cost, according to Wikipedia. But the movie opened on August 8th in 1986, and it opened in, 14th place with
Yikes.
only $1.7 million, limping its way to $5.8 million. But it was a flop.
The reason we're talking about this movie is because there's a new animated Transformers movie, Transformers 1, and I saw a review of it just today, and I scrolled through it really quickly. One line caught my eye where it said that the movie has to sort of explain who these characters are and what's going on in this universe for people who are new to Transformers. And you kind of said earlier, Clint, that this movie doesn't bother.
No.
I was lost right out of the gate as somebody who does not know this franchise, does not know this IP. I saw the Michael Bay movie, the first one, at your house, actually, Clint. I don't even remember if you were there. I know your brother was there.
I don't remember that. I did see that in the movie theaters, and I was thrilled that they brought back Peter Cullen to voice Optimus Prime, because that's a big deal. And I don't think they could have gotten away with not doing that. But then I was just sort of like, what the heck was that? And I didn't see it again, so I don't think I was there.
Definitely your brother Curtis was there. I remember that. But there's a little bit of VO, and voiceover, as annoying as I find it, can do a job of, explaining details. And really, it just says it's the year 2005, and the Autobots and the Decepticons, they had a war. The Decepticons took over Cybertron, which is good exposition, but also I still have questions. What the hell are these things? They're alive, but they're robots. So who made them? Did humans build them? Because they transform into Earth vehicles, and then there's also Dinobots and Insectobots and a lot of bots that look like things that we have on Earth.
Sharkobots.
Right, they're shark bots. They speak English. They turn into cars that we have. Who is this human that's with them? Like, I have so many questions, and the answer that the movie gives to those questions is you don't get to find out. Go and watch the cartoon. Too bad for you.
You don't. It assumes that you've seen everything, and there are answers to those questions. The Dinobots were built on Earth. The Insecticons, same thing. They didn't all come from Cybertron. They crash landed. Yeah, they're answers. So how much time do you got? You know, because they don't explain that, and they just jump right in. I think it's for people that were already Transformers fans.
Right. And now on that, though, they don't explain any of the lore at all. But they do something that a lot of movies would do. And, Clint, as a playwright, you want to name drop your characters. So you'd be like, yeah, Susie, how are you? But it's way too obvious. There's a line that the adult human says on the radio. He says, "Tell my son Daniel that I love him very much." And I'm like, wait, does he have multiple kids and he loves Daniel the most?
The reason they name dropped him so deliberately is because he's a new character.
Oh.
It's now 2005. So the person you're talking about, the dad, is Spike. Witwicky is his name. He's a teenager throughout the whole first two seasons. And he's a major character. He's like the human friend of the Autobots. And if you watch the beginning, if you're familiar with all the characters that were already from the first two seasons, they name drop the new characters. And this really does focus on a lot of new characters, like a new core team. To Hasbro's credit with the writers and everything, one thing this definitely successfully accomplished is launching a new line, launching a new season, and having it be a new world with Ultra Magnus and Galvatron and all of these new characters. Megatron becomes Galvatron, so we watch that happen, which is good. Show don't tell, right? But Ultra Magnus is just there. Cup is just there. Hot Rod. They get name dropped and a little more of an introduction than, say, for example, the Dinobots, because everybody knows the Dinobots. They're in the movie because of popularity. The Dinobots were hugely popular. They messed up. There are 5 Dinobots, and you only ever see 4 at a time. And they forgot about the Stegosaurus, and I forget his name, Snarl, Slag, Sludge, whatever. Yeah, but there's this one blip of a scene where Ultra Magnus says, in like the middle of the movie, "Guys, we got to get out of here. We have to abandon Earth." And the Dinobots are all listening. And for that one, 2 seconds, you see the Stegosaurus. And you're like, they didn't forget about him. They just didn't draw more than 4 at a time. And so when they wind up on the Quintessence planet, it's 4 Dinobots. And you're watching this, you're like, okay, you never introduced them. You probably should have, because then you would have realized, wait, I think we forgot one.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the Dinobots. The one name that I remember and the one character that I can really easily identify is Grimlock. Because he starts every sentence with, "Me, Grimlock, don't like that," or whatever, which gets really old really fast. To be clear, I'm not saying that I like it, but every time he says something, I'm like, okay, I know who that is. That's Grimlock.
Yep.
I don't really like Grimlock, but whatever. And I have to just go back a little bit that Daniel is a new character.
Right.
That's really fascinating to me. I would have never guessed that, because he makes so much sense that there would be a human boy in Transformers,
right,
in the movie, sure, but also in the cartoon, because that's your proxy for the audience. I assume that's like the bulk of their fan base. And all this movie does is torture this poor kid.
Yeah.
He's separated from his father for no reason that we're ever given. He loves Optimus Prime. He watches him die. He gets like an exoskeleton, which is cool, but then he just falls over himself all the time. I mean, they're not particularly nice to this new kid.
One of the things I liked about this, though, was that every time they had to run, all of the Transformers would just bolt, and they would forget about him. And it was RC, who was like the mother character, that would like, "Oh yeah, Daniel, everybody else would be like, come on, kid. And you thought to yourself, like, oh, right, they're not mammals.
Right.
They didn't have kids, so they probably don't have like a parenting bone in their body. And that kind of explains that. And the other thing I liked about the usage of Daniel is, the famous trope of like pet the cat?
Yeah.
Like it's famous in The Godfather. You have to identify this mob boss as a good guy because you want the audience to be on his side. So what do? You introduce him. You don't even show his face yet. At the beginning of the first Godfather movie, you see him petting a cat. Well, I think Daniel is that cat. When we meet Daniel, he's fishing with Hot Rod, and Hot Rod is nice to him. Like Hot Rod is petting the cat, he's being nice to the human because this is about Autobots. So then, as a side note, they catch a fish. Now, a Transformer's not going to eat a fish, but then they have to run. So Hot Rod carefully throws the fish back in the water, and I think to myself, like, you're about to kill off Optimus Prime, but by golly, that fish better be catch and release so we don't screw up with the kids' heads,
Right. Well, you mentioned that they're not mammals and they don't have kids, but also RC is a girl robot. And cool, that's great. Representation matters. Don't get me wrong. But I was just surprised that there was a girl robot because then that does imply that all the other Transformers are male. And why do these robots have gender at all?
That's actually a touchy topic.
Oh, is it? Is that like a season of the show or something?
No, not really on the show. So that has been something that has been a blind spot by the creators of just about all robot-based fiction for generations. Like the Transformers were guilty of that in the first 2 seasons. On Cybertron, Optimus Prime had sort of a girlfriend, Alita 1.
Okay.
But this is something that's kind of, I think, really gotten under a lot of fans' nerves, especially female fans of the Transformers, is like, dude, why is there like one token female robot? Why aren't there more? There actually are a few others in the Transformers series. But yeah, that's a lightning rod right there.
I mean, it's like there's only Smurfette, and they never explain it. It's kind of a sexist thing where it's like, what? We have a girl.
But like they're robots, so they don't need to be male or female. Like they can just be robots.
Right.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about Unicron, which I definitely thought was unicorn the first time I heard it. But Unicron is basically a cross between the Death Star from Star Wars and a butthole, right? Like it is capable of destroying planets, and it looks like it has a butthole that devours the planets.
Yeah, the intake.
Yeah.
I will say that I thought of it immediately as Galactus, the character from the Marvel universe. Not
Yeah.
I don't think he's been in the MCU, but from the comics, that he eats planets. Or like Sauron a little bit, a Sauron in space. Then, of course, it transforms into a robot. And then I'm like, now I get it. You're a robot.
He's Typhon from Greek mythology. The big, giant, blocks out the sky creature who, at the end of like the rise of the Olympians, they have to destroy him, and they do. And he's supposedly falls out of the sky and is buried under Mount Etna in Sicily or something like that. But that's probably your best comparison that I can think of is Typhon, that the character from Greek mythology that is just this ginormous creature. Well, okay, really the best comparison is the Death Star, right?
I mean, kind of. That's just where my mind goes. And also voiced by Orson Welles in like the last thing he did before he died, days before he died. Apparently the audio was so unusable that they had to use like state-of-the-art synthesizer technology to be able to put it in the movie. And I guess that probably made it sound more robotic. So fine, that works as he's playing a robot. The guy's Orson frickin' Welles, and this is the last thing he did. He was describing it as, I played as something that got destroyed by some other thing, a robot or a toy or something.
Yeah, he wasn't thrilled with it.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand that. Also, so the Unicron wants to destroy the matrix of leadership, and that's why he turns Megatron into Galvatron. But why doesn't he just go after it himself? He can destroy planets. It seems like he could very easily just gobble up whatever world that was on, and it wouldn't really be much of an issue.
You'd have to ask Unicron. That's a decision that, first of all, the Autobot Matrix of Leadership does not exist until the movie. It's not in the first 2 seasons. So,
Okay.
and they do continue that after the movie for the seasons 3 and 4. But Unicron says in the movie that's the only thing that can destroy him. So I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to get close to it. I'm not really sure.
Okay. When Spike tries to destroy Unicron early in the movie, he like sets up a bomb, and so the bomb's gonna blow up Unicron when he eats it. That doesn't work, and he says, "Oh shit, what are we gonna do now?" Which kind of made me do a double take, because you can hear cursing in cartoons. I mean, South Park, Rick and Morty, there's a very, very, very long list. But I mean, this is very clearly a movie for kids. And I was just really surprised that they threw that in there really when they didn't have to.
One curse word. I didn't see the movie as a kid. So the second thing you hear from people who did see it, number one being, of course, they killed off Optimus Prime. Number two is there's a curse word. And you're like, what? No, come on. And it's a Transformers. Yes, I did a double take too. I was like, wait, he just said it, didn't he? There's a one curse word in the whole movie. Why? Why one curse word? I mean, look, I don't know if I'm guessing right or if this is just another conspiracy theory. But when you guys were that age, remember there is a difference between a PG and a G movie, right?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, you didn't want to watch a little kids movie. I don't want to watch, The Land Before Time or whatever. I want to be badass. I want to see stuff blow up. And even as a little boy in the 80s, that's what I thought. I tend to think that they were maybe just sealing the deal. This is going to be a PG movie. This is not going to be G rated.
It was a business decision. They wanted it to be a PG movie because at that time, G movies had far fewer screenings in the theaters. They would allot more showings for PG movies, so they deliberately put that word in just that one time, just the once, so that it would get the PG rating, so there would be more screenings, so it could theoretically make more money, and so that apparently more adults would go to see the movie with their kid. Although I read that and I don't really think that makes much sense, because if you're going to see the movie with a little kid, you're gonna go and sit there anyway,
right?
Because you have to.
Yeah, I think they wanted it to have an edge. They didn't go soft on you. If you were a kid and you went to see this movie, you might be 7 years old, but you're gonna leave with some hair on your chest.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I look at this movie as the equivalent of your uncle giving you your first beer and cigarette at your grandfather's funeral.
Wow, that's a great summary.
That's amazing. That is really, really funny, and I think probably accurate based on what I've read. James, you mentioned Galactus before. I've stayed with the MCU through the most recent phases. It's gotten more criticism. And a criticism I've read a lot about the Marvel movies is that some of these movies feel like they're not movies. It's just action figures being slammed together. And you could maybe say that's true about this Marvel movie, that Marvel movie. But if you think that's a problem in movies, you should watch the Transformers : the movie, because that's what this movie is. It is just action figures being slammed together. It is just fight sequence after fight sequence after fight sequence. Like, there is a plot here, but it is so damn paper thin. And really, the only thing that ever changes in the battle scenes is the music. And then half of the time, it's the same song for the battle scenes anyway. It's just this song, The Touch, that they play how many times? 3 times? 8 times? Or just they all sound exactly the same? I don't know.
It's pretty relentless.
Yeah.
It's a lot of like hard rock-ish, what the 80s would call hard rock.
Power ballads.
Yeah, like screechy guitar kind of stuff. But it's like the mixing on this is, you're going to hear this music. And I mean, I loved hearing Weird Al on the Planet of Junk.
Sure. I mean, it doesn't make any sense for what's happening on screen, based on the lyrics, although that's also true for every other song where they're just talking about you've got the touch. I guess you've got the touch, you've got the power. Okay, fine. But yeah, a lot of these seem to be like relationship songs that are playing over these battle scenes. It doesn't feel appropriate.
I'll bet you a simple letter to Weird Al. Can we use one of your songs in this beloved children's cartoon that we're going to be making into a movie? I'll bet you he says yes more than he says no to something like that, like a kid's movie. I don't think he knew about Optimus Prime, but I think he would say yes to something like that. And he obviously did.
Well, the reason that Dare to Be Stupid is on the soundtrack is because the soundtrack was done by Scotty Brothers Records, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say their biggest artist was Weird Al. So it was a cross-promotional thing. Clint, were there any other things you wanted to touch on about this movie?
Well, I mean, just the cast real quick. I think we have to acknowledge it. If you want to see a movie with Leonard Nimoy, Robert Stack, Eric Idle, Orson Welles, I'm going to be leaving people out, Judd Nelson. It's some of the best voice actors of all time, like Peter Cullen, Frank Welker. There's no other way to do it. Like, you're not going to get these guys in a movie like that. And I like how they kept the actors from the original series. I got to say what I really like here, because we've been kind of taking some shots, but too many times in an animated series, you have the series, then the movie, and they replace all the actors. And that drives me nuts.
Yeah.
I saw the Lego Ninjago movie with my kids because they were into that. It was, I don't know how many years ago. So you've got this guy who does the voice of Sensei Wu, and he's great in the series. And then you go and you recast him for the movie. Who do you put in but the guy who's like the best comedic martial arts stuntman of all time, Jackie Chan? And
right,
you're wasting both of them. Jackie Chan doing the voice is like, oh, that's cool, but why did you do that to the original actor? So they didn't do that here. They kept all the original cast. And then for the new characters, they cast these amazing actors in the first time you see them. And then when they keep those characters for later in the series, then they recast them, and that's okay. They're not hurting anybody. So
right.
I like that. I like how they used the cast. I thought it was well cast, and I don't know how they pulled that off. No, I don't know of any other animated movie that pulls off. I mean, Orson Welles, come on.
You know, you unlocked a random memory from my childhood. I must have been like 5 or 6 years old, and I went to the video store, which is what you did in the 80s, and I was so excited because there was a Smurfs movie. I remember it was something called like Smurfs the Magic Flute or something. All the voices were different. Brainy Smurf and Smurfette and Papa Smurf. No one sounded the same. So I was like, what the fuck is this?
Just if you think it's okay to do that, to recast for no reason, imagine this. The Muppet Show, season 1, season 2. Now we have the Muppet movie. Let's recast all of them. Let's give them all different voices. That's insane. Why did they do that?
Right.
I mean, maybe it's the idea is to put a big name on it and draw a crowd and sell tickets, but I like the way they did it in Transformers. They didn't recast. And just to acknowledge whoever assembled this cast, well done.
Get it? Assembled Transformers.
Gosh, I'm doing it involuntarily now.
And Clint, you mentioned that you wanted to play a game with us before we started recording. What's the game?
Okay, just a few questions. This is, I call this, gosh, that reminds me of. We already kind of covered one of them. I'll start. Unicron in deadly planetary form, destroying a peaceful, prosperous society on another larger planet. Gosh, that reminds me of the Death Star from Star Wars.
Yep.
Okay, I'll throw the next one out there, and you guys can finish the sentence if you want. Hot Rod sparring with a lightsaber on the spaceship against a droid. Gosh, that reminds me of
Luke Skywalker
doing the exact same thing. Correct. Ding, ding, ding.
Okay.
So we have a trend. That's 2 for Star Wars. When the voice of Optimus Prime from Beyond the Robot Grave says, "Arise, Rodimus Prime," right before he destroys Unicron, aka the Death Star. Gosh, that reminds me of.
Oh, is that Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Use the Force, Luke. Yep. And then the last one. Right after that, Galvatron hurling off into space, so we don't really know if he lives or dies after Unicron, aka the Death Star, explodes. And by the way, Darth Vader, Galvatron doesn't die. He's in the series later. Gosh, that reminds me of
Darth Vader at the Death Star.
Darth Vader spinning out of control. Yeah, it's hard to ignore, man. And this movie is 1986.
But to be fair, everything copied Star Wars. Everything did. I mean, He-Man was basically a power sword. Thundercats was Lion-O had this dagger that basically grew in size. G.I. Joe, then the airplane battles were kind of trying to mimic the Star Wars airplane battles, and everything was Star Wars.
Yeah.
Star Wars, Star Wars, Star Wars.
Even the Hot Rod / Rodimus Prime, their one-on-one battle, while outside there's a raging space battle. That's
Return of the Jedi.
That's pretty much the end of Return of the Jedi, yeah.
Yeah.
And hiding on the planet of junk, that's similar to Empire with the Worm asteroid, right?
Yeah. I'm not defending it as a Star Wars ripoff because you're right. It is theft, really. I mean, there's a line between homage and just plagiarism. This is on the plagiarism side. But in the defense of the screenwriter, you're writing the script for a movie. The movie is a toy commercial. All you care about is just selling toys. Plot is so very clearly not important. It's just about action scenes and these robots fighting each other. If you're going to do something for a plot, what should you rip off? Star Wars, why not? That's
Sure.
the one to pick.
Well, it worked for Star Wars. So if you're going to rip something off, don't rip off a movie like Transformers.
Exactly. But Clint, let me ask you about the movie as a whole. You're clearly a Transformers fan. Do you think that the Transformers : the movie stands the test of time?
No, but I go beyond that.
Okay.
I ask the question, how fast does it not stand the test of time? Right from the beginning, we probably should have had a photosensitivity warning
Oh,
on
yeah.
this one.
Yep.
Holy cow. And I'm not joking here. This might have caused seizures,
Yeah.
right? It's bad. And when you make light in a cartoon, when you literally make certain parts of the screen glow and light up, there's a whole technique to that, which involves like shining light and cutting it out and having it shine through. That's a lot of work. But man, the flashing, especially when Unicron has to like beat down Galvatron emotionally with all that red light, there's just a lot of it.
Yeah.
The big one is they would just not kill off an Optimus Prime type character in a kid's movie today, or a movie where your audience is clearly your customer who's buying the toy. They wouldn't do that. I think a lot of people in our generation who saw the movie, maybe they didn't leave the movie theater crying, but only because the death came 20 something minutes in and they had like an hour left
Right.
to sit through. But I think it caused a lot of heartache and a lot of tears. That's just wouldn't happen today. But really, I think the moment it does not stand the test of time. So Unicron killing the Peaceful Planet is kind of the cold open, and then they do the Transformers theme. Right after that, the year is 2005. No, it's not. No, maybe if we had Transformers in our society, that's where we would be at with technology.
But maybe we do and we don't know it.
Well, they could be. I mean, my toaster might actually be like a real low level, like not the top brass, like a real low level, like a laser beak type scout spying on me.
Sure, rank and file.
Yeah, exactly. When they say the year is 2005, it's sort of like they didn't write this for the person like me watching it in 2024. They wrote it for 1986. But from there on out, the answers for me is no.
Okay. All right. James, what do you think?
Something that bothered me about this film that I would see in a lot of kind of a lot of the longer, even the Disney kind of films, you could tell that this was made to be broken up into like a 5 days in a weekday. You could play this movie
Yes.
over the course of 5 days because there were a lot of parts where they would fade to black and then immediately fade up from
I don't
black.
think they ever did, though.
That's interesting because they would do that with He-Man. He-Man released a feature-length animated film, not the Dolph Lundgren film, that they would later chop that up. They did the same with DuckTales. But I have to say, this film does not stand the test of time. I was kind of interested in seeing it because I was really interested in this kind of epic death of this character that I'd kind of see and learn about. It's absolutely nothing when Optimus Prime dies. I mean, his deathbed words are kind of nice, but I feel like you're just watching a random 3 to 4 episode arc of loosely put together stories. Like Alan says, there is a plot, but mostly it's just a bunch of action sequences tied together, and there's kind of a MacGuffin they're going for, I guess, and a bad guy that's approaching. And maybe if you have nostalgia for it, go watch this film. It's probably pretty cool for you, or it'll make, unlock your nightmares from a kid when this guy died. But for me, it really did nothing for me. I don't recommend it to people that are not Transformers fans. So no, for me, it does not stand the test of time. We're 0 for 2, Al. Is it going to be 1 and 2, or is it going to be 0 and 3? Let's hear it, Al.
Of course, this movie does not stand the test of time. This movie was really hard to watch. It's like less than an hour and a half, and I was so bored. I kept checking to see how much time was left, and every time that I checked, I was like, oh dear God, there's that much. Even when it was like only 10 minutes left, I was like, God damn, I really just want this thing to end. I mean, we've watched a lot of movies on this podcast. We've watched a lot of bad movies on this podcast. This might be maybe not the worst, but definitely top 5 or bottom 5, I guess. This is a bad movie. I take notes when I watch movies for the podcast, and I'm just going to read one of my notes as I watch the Transformers, the movie. What is happening? I stopped to jot that down because I was so confused. Not even just in like the big picture of like, why are these robots very Earth-based if they're not from Earth? And, how are they sentient, and do they have souls, and why can they die? And all of these big questions, which I did have, but also I couldn't tell them apart. They all look the same. The action sequences are well animated, and I get it that a lot of people worked very hard, and this is impressive animation for 1986, but I was just lost. I didn't know which ones were the good guys who were hitting the bad guys, or the bad guys hitting the good guys. I just couldn't follow it. I didn't care. I had no emotional investment. And yeah, I get it that this was made for people who had already watched the cartoons, the first 2 seasons. Cool. But you gotta try to make it somewhat approachable for people who aren't there. Maybe you can relate to this too, Clint. You go to see movies with your kids. A lot of times when I take my kids to see a movie that they want to see that's a kid's movie, I'm into it. Like I'll be invested even if I don't love it. Okay, I can get into the stories and the characters and whatever, and I can sit there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and at least be engaged on some level. Yeah. I could just imagine parents taking their kids to see this in 1986 and just like falling asleep, or trying to and not being able to with all the flashing lights and the power ballads. Maybe it was impossible.
Probably would be pretty hard to fall asleep, but
yeah.
So the parent that took their kid, assuming the kid's a Transformers fan, that's why they're there.
Right.
You would have already bought your kid some of these toys, or at least 1 or 2. So you might have some idea. If you saw the first 2 seasons, and actually a lot of it makes perfect sense. I know that's like a huge leap of faith.
That's fair.
But now that I got to put myself in your shoes here, because when you see an Insecticon close up munching on the side of Autobot City or whatever they called it, because that was a one-off, the Autobot City thing. They'd replace that with another, like an actual character called Metroplex. But when you see that, yeah, how do you know that's a Decepticon, and how do you know what they're doing? When the Constructicons form Devastator, first of all, you see all 6 Constructicons, the green and purple, construction vehicles, and they're standing in robot form, and you just know Megatron's about to give the command, Constructicons form Devastator. You've seen it 20 times. You know he's going to do it. You know he's going to start pounding on the wall, and he's going to use brute force. I mean, it's like second nature at some point. It kind of makes sense. And because it makes sense, it's not so bad as the way it would be for somebody who didn't know the characters in advance.
And I get that. And I think that it's a thing that they say all the time with any movie, still to this day in 2024, when there's a movie that's based on IP, which is most movies, it's the line that the star says, the writer says, the director says in interviews when they say, hey, this is for the fans. But even if you're not a fan, this movie is for you too. It's like the spin, right? And very often that's not really the case. just random example, the Super Mario Brothers movie, there's a lot of winks to the audience if you know your Super Mario lore that you're going to get certain things and certain references that might fly over other people's heads. But if you've never heard of this game and you've never played a game, you can still just follow, okay, this is the good guy, that's the bad guy, he's trying to rescue her. You know, like, it makes sense.
Yeah, they didn't try here. They didn't try with this one. I don't think they put any energy into that at all.
No.
Because I think what they were doing, they succeeded, is they were launching the new round of Transformers. When you watch the first two seasons, they do go back and they start on Cybertron and then they have to leave because they're almost out of energy. But then they go back on and off throughout the first two seasons from Earth. It's hard not to admit is some of the coolest stuff when you're a kid watching this is when they go to Cybertron. So I think they figured that out and said, you know what, we're gonna shoot this 19 years in the future. And by the way, we're 19 years after 2005, so there's some symmetry there. Yeah,
okay.
We're going to basically make more of the Cybertron stuff. It's going to be in space and more of that cool stuff. So that's what they did with this movie. They might have hurt their cause by alienating some viewers with killing off Optimus Prime and maybe some other things, but they definitely successfully broke away from the toy that turns into the minivan and got more into the toy that turns into a starship. And they pulled that off, and this movie accomplishes that, and they stuck with it. So, like the quintessons who maybe make no sense in the movie, the spinning head sort of cybernetic things,
right?
They stuck with those, and they expanded on that later on in the series. And that's what this movie was doing, and it did not care to do. It's almost like not sure that it really cared to do anything else. It wasn't for the person who showed up late and couldn't get a ticket for Top Gun and said, let's see Transformers instead. You know, it wasn't for that person. It was for the Transformers fan before and after, really.
Well, and also it's a toy commercial.
And to that point, there's an interesting story, though, on the season 4. And this is not a conspiracy theory. This is something that a writer said in an interview. A writer of the TV show, the episodic cartoon. So they're going to do like a 3 or 4 episode season 4 and just a short one, and that'd be it. And there's probably a budget thing or something like that. Hasbro goes up to them and they have a number. This is how many new toys we're going to push out, and we want you to introduce all of them. And it was some crazy 100-something number. And a lot of them are like 5 robot teams that form one big thing. It was a high number, and the writers did the math on the runtime of the remaining episodes and got back to Hasbro and said, with this request, we're going to have to introduce a new character every 28 seconds.
Jesus.
Do you really think we can write 4 episodes where we do that? And Hasbro backed down a little bit and said, yeah, that's kind of impossible. Okay, just do your best. When we were aging out, when our group was kind of aging out of this, there were all sorts of Transformer toys that were for sale, and you didn't really ever see them in the show. And that was a little weird, but there they were, and that's kind of what they were going for start to finish.
Well, all 3 of us said this movie doesn't stand the test of time, and I hated watching the movie. But I very much enjoyed this conversation. Clint, I will watch any movie, as terrible as it is, as terrible as the Transformers : the movie. I'm a little hesitant to say or worse, because I'm a little afraid of what that might open in terms of Pandora's box. But the point is, Clint, thank you very much for coming back on the show, and you are welcome to come back anytime.
Oh, that is a relief. I was worried I wasn't going to be invited back, and you're going to really rethink your policy about letting the guest pick the movie.
No. Not at all. I love you. I will talk with you about anything. It's always a good time. Yeah, maybe pick a movie that's a little better next time as just
I'll try.
A friendly request.
Absolutely not. Pick a bad movie. I don't mind watching bad movies with you. For you, this could be great.
We'll have more to talk about.
Thank you again for joining us. I will post the link for Bibbidi Bobbidi Boot Camp. Please keep writing these plays. I will continue to listen to them.
Thank you.
Probably at the gym and get funny looks. I don't care. It's worth it. But thank you again for joining us. That's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we are going to be talking about the movie Trainspotting with film producer Jonathan Weissler. I haven't seen that movie in years. Looking forward to revisiting that. hey, you know what you should do? Go on Apple Podcasts and write us a review. Write a review. Not just hit the 5 stars, but write something. It can be 3 words. Love the show! ! Still, that would help us. It would help people find the show. We'd really, really appreciate that. You can write more than that if you like. But write into us at Test of Time Pod on Facebook, X, Instagram, Threads. Let us know your thoughts about Transformers, this movie, Optimus Prime, Autobots, Dinobots, Sharkobots, Insectobots, Constructionobots. But you're glaring at me because I'm getting these names wrong.
Get the first 2 right.
Okay, well, I was close on the others, maybe?
You're good with your prefixes. Sharkticons, Insecticons.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Sharkticon.
Constructicons. Well, you hear the con in there. They're Decepticons.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. But, yeah, we'll see you next week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.